So as we finish up the last section of chapter 18, it's such a powerful chapter because chapter 18 is the one that tells us that we literally have infinity in our souls. We are Or Ein Sof Melubash Beguf. We are the infinite light of Hashem enclosed in a physical body. How is that possible? We said that each and every one of us has 10 attributes to our soul. We're created in the image of God. This is the bequest we were given by our patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that each and every one of us has a soul which has within it 3 intellectual and 7 emotional attributes. And those 10 attributes come from any one of the 4 worlds of Atzilus, Beria, Yetzira, and Asiya, the world of emanation, creation, formation, or action, which are the 4 worlds of spiritual descent, from godliness down to this physical world. This physical world is the lowest level of the world of action. But the world of Gan Eden is a spiritual world in the level of formation. The world of angels is a spiritual world in the world of creation. The world of emanation itself is within the Godhead itself. But since we have a soul that originates even on any one of those 4 worlds, since we come from the 10 attributes, our souls all originate in anywhere in one of those 40 attributes, basically the 10 from each of the 4 worlds. Even if we come from the lowest level of the lowest world, because holiness incorporates coexistence. Holiness is the essence of holiness is humility. The essence of unholiness is ego. So ego, unholiness cannot coexist with anything else. Holiness, the essence of holiness is humility, and therefore it's coexistence and it's interaction. So since even if we come from the lowest level of the lowest world, we do incorporate within our souls the highest level of the highest world. Now the highest level of the highest world is Chachma, the burst of inspiration, the flash of the idea, which is Chachma of the highest world of Atzilus, of emanation. That level, we explained in chapter 18, is the landing spot for the infinite light of Hashem. Why? We explained that all other attributes have an identity, have a character. But Chachma has no character. Chachma, as indicated by its own name, you rearrange the letters to Koachma, which means the power of what, or the power of nothing. When you experience an idea, you do feel overwhelmed. You are not in control of the concept. In fact, the concept is in control of you. And if you do get yourself distracted for a few moments, the concept will leave you. Whereas when you're understanding something, you're in control. When you realize, you're in control. When you're feeling kind or compassionate or strict or triumphant or humble, or if you're feeling communicative, or if you're feeling any of the attributes as I just explained, you're in control of your emotion or your intellect. The only time you're not in control is when you experience in Chachma, which is totally overwhelming to us, and that's why you have to stop everything that you're doing and say, hey, 1 second, I need to think, I need to process, I need to sort of allow this lightning strike to be processed so that I can understand and process what I just understood.
I have to go.
So the Chachma is different to the other 9 attributes in that the other 9 attributes have character. Chachma is pure transparency. And transparency, lack of ego, is the greatest landing spot for God's infinite light. Remember, it says in the Talmud about ego, he and I cannot coexist. The egoist and I cannot coexist. But humility is the lightning rod for holiness, for godliness, for infinity. Which part of our souls harbor the lightning rod for infinity? It's Chachma, because Chachma has no identity. Chachma is pure emptiness. It is pure simplicity, pure transparency. And that's why it's only within the Chachma of our souls that we are able to incorporate the essence of God's infinity. And that's where we find that infinite power is inside of our soul. So we're about to read that inside of the Tanya. Right? let's take a look at that inside of the Tanya on page 217.
217?
Yeah, 217. So why is Chachma? We're going to read what I just explained. Middle of 217. Now, as we learned in chapter 3, Chachma is the source of all intelligence and cognition. Chachma precedes Bina, comprehension, which is the experience of cognitive grasping of an idea previously intuited in a raw state by Chachma. So it's Chachma that precedes and is the source of cognition and grasping. This is also reflected in the Hebrew word Chachma, koachma, which means the power of what? Koachma, the power of what? Chachma is the power or the ability to say, what is this? An inquisitiveness and openness to that which is not just grasped and understood and still defies comprehension. Chachma is the only part of our souls that's able to relate to the unrelatable.
So Chachma is questioning. Really.
Yes, questioning, yes.
To be able to.
Because how do you get to Chachma? You gotta identify the problem so you can come to the solution, right?
Yeah.
Right? Identifying the illness is halfway to the cure. Identifying the question is halfway to the answer. Mm-hmm. Right? So it's a probe. The Chachma is the probe into the unknown. Right? And that is why the blessed infinite light can be expressed there in Chachma. This is very, very powerful words. I mean, this is game-changing words. And that is why the blessed infinite light can be expressed there in Chachma, because no thought can grasp the infinite light at all. By definition, if you can grasp, if you have definition, then you are no longer capable of grasping the undefinable. It's only if you don't have definition that you can relate to the undefined. Right? So, therefore, it is best captured by the precognitive, intuitive, and open qualities of Chachma. Right? So, are you understanding this concept, guys? Can you capture?
It's a state of receptiveness.
It's a state of receptiveness, exactly. It is a state of humility. It is a state of being ready to receive from higher. It's probing into... It's like a question. What's a question? Question is having the courage to say, I don't know where I'm going with this. But what I do know is that I don't. I know that I don't know. That's what Chachma is. Chachma is the courage to venture out of my comfort zone. Bina is totally comfortable in his little world of comprehension. Das is totally comfortable in his world of realization. Kindness is totally comfortable with his world of kindness. But Chachma is this special agent that goes out to enemy territory. He's like, I don't know where I'm going. I don't have a plan. I just know what the problem is. And that's why, because he's not in control, he has no grasp on anything other than what he doesn't know. Very humble guy, Chachma. Very humble characteristic. He just doesn't have a grip on anything. Right?
Yet.
Not yet. Chachma in and of itself is the conduit that says, I'm okay with not knowing.
Well,
you have the know-it-alls. You have these people walk around, they know everything. You ask them any question in the world, they have an answer with you within 2 seconds. They're like Google. Right? And it's a turn-off. Like, who wants to talk to such a person,
Chachma relying on Hashem.
Chachma relies on Hashem. Chachma says, I know that you know. Right? And that's why it's the perfect landing spot for infinity. Right? These words are very powerful. You can really meditate on these words. And that is why the blessed infinite light can be expressed there in Chachma, because no thought can grasp the infinite light at all. Therefore, it is best captured by the precognitive, intuitive, and open qualities of Chachma. Because Chachma doesn't grasp anything. And when you do get your flash of Chachma, what is it? What is your flash of Chachma? It's a lightning strike. You get fried. Right? You are being fried. Intellectually, you're being fried. That's why you've got to stop. Right? Yeah.
may I? I'm thinking of chemistry, for example. You're mixing liquids to find out what's happening in that situation.
Yeah.
Now, how do you relate that? Is it analogous to Chachma developing something or questioning? That could be a
Like what? Like
question.
chemistry?
Yeah.
When you, I'm sorry, I didn't capture that question. What was that again?
I'm a professor of chemistry.
Yes.
I'm mixing things to really inquire, to find out what the result will be.
Okay. Yeah, it's an inquiry.
Chasma.
Yeah, I guess so. There's a degree of chachma to that, where he says, I wonder what's going to happen if I put this together with that, where you don't know. But look, obviously the chemist has an idea.
I understood what you were...
What?
It's not the way I understood what you are proposing as chachma.
I think what the Shal is onto is the idea of probing.
Create, not something that we make up by mixing.
No, I think it's the idea of a probe, the probe into the unknown.
But we're not the ones
Exactly.
probing. The flash of light is something that happens to us.
Yeah, but why does a flash of light come to you when you ask the question? When you've identified a problem? Or maybe not. Sometimes you get a flash of inspiration with that. I guess you get in the shower, why not? Yeah, you probably could.
Yeah, the question is opening the door to the answer.
The fact of the matter is that you don't even feature when it comes to the lightning. When the lightning strikes, it doesn't matter what color clothing you're wearing. You know what I mean? It's irrelevant. It's so powerful. It's such an electric surge. The energy is so powerful. It really makes no difference who you are, where you are, as opposed to all the other 9 attributes, which are all about you and all about their definition, right? So it's the colorlessness, the transparency, the lack of character of Chachma that makes it a receptacle. But now what's going to happen is, from here to the end of the chapter, is Alter Rebbe is going to change our perception of people. He's going to say like this. This is the reason why every single Jew is a believer. This is why we have such strong faith. You know, we hear about Jews that are willing to die for their faith. Right? And you know, it's not the rabbis that are willing to die for their faith only. It's your irregular Jew. You know, he's in the clubhouse and some guy comes to him and says, you know, when somebody offends the Jewish people and says, says some snide remark about the Jews, this guy gets all offended. Well, what are you getting offended about? This secular Jew. What are you getting all offended about? What part of you is Jewish? You went in Yom Kippur in Shul. You didn't go for 37 years. Right? Like, what are you so hung up about? What? Because there's this fire within us. We have the infinite light within us. It's nothing to do with our comprehension. It doesn't matter how much Torah you've studied, how much Judaism you observe. It's not a cognitive thing. It's non-cognitive.
You told us last week that we're descendants.
By mere virtue of being a descendant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, means that you have that infinite light in your soul. It's there. It's not cognitive. It's not whether you. It's not how much you understand. It's not a result of your meditation, which leads you to be a strong Jew. Being a strong Jew, being a proud Jew, starts and ends at Chachma. Which means, by virtue of having the infinite light of Hashem inside of you, that's what makes you a strong Jew. Doesn't matter how much tefillin or you have or don't have, or how much you believe in God or you don't believe in God.
The gentleman that had his head cut off. I was born a Jew and I will die.
Yeah, that guy who was killed by the jihadists. He was in Miami. That was Daniel Pearl. There was another guy, Sotlov. I think Sotlov said the same thing. Yeah, he was married to a Gentile, that one, right?
That's right.
He wasn't married to a Jew.
Koch put that on his...
Koch. Now Koch got buried in a Trinity cemetery, right?
And he put it...
And he wrote those words of Daniel Pearl on his tombstone, exactly. Yeah. So why does he do that? How does this happen? Koch is no yeshiva student, you know what I mean? He's not exactly famous for his meticulousness of kosher diet, right? But what? He puts this on his tombstone? What's crazy? Why don't you put something about New York City? The greatest city in the world, the city that never sleeps. Because this is what defines us as a Jew. And now this changes our perception of Jews. You know, people say to me, Rabbi, how can you deal with this pro-Palestinian Jew? How can you deal with this Jew that hates Jews? How can you talk to a guy like, I don't know what, Noam Chomsky or something, right? And a Chabadnik will say, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm a chapter 18 Tanya Jew. I look at every single Jew and I know that what they don't know is that they're a proud Jew. In fact, they do know it. They're probably very proud of being a Jew. He hates Israel and he's pro-Palestinian and he still loves being Jewish. Of course he loves Hashem. And even though he says he hates God, he doesn't hate God. He loves God. Right? And that's our job as Chabad rabbis, is to bring out that awareness that they don't know about, right? Because the light is already in their souls. It's not an understanding. It's not a comprehension, and it's not a meditation, and it's not a feeling that they nurture. It's a light that is already present in their souls by virtue of what? Of their birthright. What?
It's something you never lose.
Something you never lose. Yeah, you never lose it. You can never divest. And that's why even when they try to convert to other faiths, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. They can't do it. Because you can't extinguish an infinite light. It's like trying to block a spring.
You can't join anything else.
What happens when you block a spring? The water's going to come out of somewhere. It's just a spring. It's a natural spring. You think you're going to put a brick over here, it's going to stop. It's not going to stop it. It's going to come out of somewhere else. So you think that by taking the communion or something, you're going to block your Jewish guilt. Not happening. It's going to come out of somewhere else. That's going to drive you nuts. It's going to drive you crazy because the light is there, and you think you're going to put a piece of paper or a brick in front of the light. It's going to come shining through the cracks.
But then
that's how you can never give up on a fellow Jew.
One day, that is one of the motives what a Jew should give his life for.
What is?
If somebody tries to convert you by force, a Jew has to give his life.
Has to give his life. Okay. Are you asking a question or are you making a statement?
No, I'm asking a question.
Yes, he does. Why does he? Why would he do that?
It's not possible to be converted by.
Why would a Jew want to give up his life? Why would he want to give up his life? The reason is, would a person give up their life if his wife is being executed in front of his eyes? You think he would do that? Or his children?
To exchange his life for somebody else's life, maybe. Yeah.
Of course he would, right? So we spend all of our lives thinking that God is not part of our lives. But when push comes to shove, and when we're forced into a situation where we have to either, where we have to choose between, embracing or denouncing our Jewish identity, at that moment, for the first time in our lives, it dawns upon us that my God is who I am. That's the only time that light shines. Right? When I realize that the light within me is really who I am. See, this is why Jews have such a hard time with conversion, because they have such a hard time with conversion. Other religions, they're like, they have these Englishmen or Germans that are taken captive by the jihadists, right? He's like, I became Muhammad al-Buslaini, whatever, and no problem, I'm back home now, big deal. So the Jews, he can't deal with the conversion. Right? Because he knows that I'm denying my faith. I'm denying my identity. You realize that just like I would give up my life for my kids or my spouse, I would give up my life for my God. Not because I'm such a religious person, but because my God is who I am. It is I. I am God. God is me. Remember that song I played for you last week? I think I played for you last week, that Israeli musician. His name is Hanan Ben Ari. Wikipedia, the song Wikipedia, did I play for you last week? I didn't play for you last week? What?
Don't label me. Don't label you.
Yeah, did I mention it?
Of course.
I just want to play you the song, just one section of the song, because it's such a beautiful, concept in popular culture. So I'm playing you the song. Just listen to the words a second. It's in Hebrew, but he says, "Don't put me in a cage. How easy it is to go with your thoughts, to go with automatic conditioning which don't require thinking. It's easy to tag people, to just... We like to put people in pigeonholes. Here. Don't put me in a cage. Don't identify me on Wikipedia." And this is it now. I'm everything. I am nothing. The infinite light enclosed in a body. I am everything. I am nothing. I am the infinite light enclosed in a body. Just one more time, I'm going to play that for you.
Wow.
I'm everything. I am nothing. Infinite light enclosed in a body. So don't put me in a cage. Anyways, I love that song because it brings out this powerful message. So, as much as we choose to stamp on our God and to abuse and throw the Holocaust at him and all sorts of other problems we blame God with, the reason for Jewish guilt is because you cannot stamp out this infinite light. And when your back is against the wall, when push comes to shove, the Jew will always realize that my faith is who I am. not because it's cognizant, not because I care, but because the light shines inside of me. It's a light thing. This light is the essence of my soul, right? Now, bear in mind, when it comes to this infinite light, it doesn't matter if you're a great rabbi or if you're married to a non-Jew and you're eating pork. It doesn't matter. Because with regards to that infinite light, we're all like totally simpletons. You can't be like closer to infinity or a little further away from infinity. We're all infinitely removed from infinity. Every one of us is the same simple with regard to that infinite light. And that's what King David means when he says, Va'ani, I'm like an animal. I'm like an animal, but I'm always with you. He says, I'm like a donkey staring at the moon, but I know that you're with me. Like, my relationship with you is not cognizant. It's not, yes, it is cognizant, but on the essence level, my relationship with you is beyond reason, beyond understanding, beyond comprehension. I know that we are married. Just is. It's like you and your spouse. Even when things don't make sense, even when he's acting crazy, she's whatever saying crazy things, doesn't matter. We're one. We're just one. I'm always with you, even if it makes no sense, no rhyme or reason. That's what King David is saying. Holocaust or no Holocaust, says King David. You and I are just one. I'm always with you. We'll see that in the words of Tanya. It's beautiful. Okay? And that's the reason why Jews will die for God. That's the reason. The same way that they'll die for their kids. The same way that you'll die for your country. Why would you die for your country? Why do we have 18-year-olds that go and die for their country? They go to Afghanistan. Why do they do this? Because this is who I am. This is my nationality. This is my identity. I'm an American. Right? I'm an Israeli. I'm a Jew. Right? The same way that they go to war to die for their nationality, we will die for our faith. Because my faith is not just an extra part of my life. You know, when we vote, when we go to the voting, to the polling booths, the first thing, Social Security. Second thing, taxes. Third thing is whatever. And you know, Israel or Jewish rights is like number 24 on the totem pole, right? When we're cognizant. But when we're not being cognizant, when the gun is to your head, God forbid, that's when the light rises to the top, and you realize I can't separate myself from this light. Let's take a look in the Tanya now for this. Okay, so we're in the bottom of 217. And we're going to go through the end of the chapter. That is why all Jews, second to last paragraph in 217, that is why all Jews, even women.
I love that one.
Yeah.
But he explains why women.
Read the explanation.
Who, when the Tanya was written, did not receive any formal education. Remember, the woman, they couldn't afford to send them to school, right? Even the women who were not educated and other uneducated people believe in God. That's why we believe in God. You don't have to be a rabbi to believe in God. Since faith is rooted in Chachma, you realize how powerful this is. Now you know where our faith comes from. It's hidden love. Faith is hidden love, which is where this chapter started. Since faith is rooted in Chachma, a level of the soul shared by everybody, and is beyond knowledge and cognition. For the quote from Proverbs says, for the simpleton believes everything, and the sensible one uses his understanding. So the sensible one uses his understanding. King Solomon is glorifying the simpleton right now. He says, faith goes to the simpleton. Faith is beyond the reason. Faith starts where logic ends. Faith is not a replacement for logic. That is what scientists like to tell you. The Bible critics like to tell you that science replaces faith. Torah says, no, that's babemaisis. Science, logic does not replace faith. Faith begins where logic ends. So they make fun of us by saying, oh, you guys you have a brain, but you don't use it. We say, of course we use our brain as much as you do. In fact, more than you do, we use our brains. But where logic ends, for example, what came before creation? What came before the Big Bang? Do you know, Mr. Scientist? You don't know. You're still struggling for the past 4,000 years, okay? So your definition of insanity, you have to go, faith begins where logic ends, where you can no longer understand, where you hit a brick wall, that's where faith begins, right? So he says, faith is not the replacement of logic. Faith is higher than logic.
Actually, they refer to that period, scientists refer to that as a singularity, because they have all sorts of equations by which they can establish that 14 billion point in time, but that is a singularity. There is no scientific way of defining it. So the very moment of the Big Bang is a singularity.
So the irony is that they're actually using faith to come to that conclusion. So if you're already using faith, what's the problem, right? Now, and he continues, and with regard to the blessed Holy One, who transcends understanding and knowledge, and no thought can grasp him at all, we are all like simpletons compared to him. Who do you think you are that you're going to grasp the infinite God? Don't be a fool. Don't be a fool. You know what I mean? You're like a first grader who says that he understands Einstein. You're making a joke of yourself, right? So when it comes to the infinite God, so we, Chabad, we try to use our Chabad. We try to use our brains. We try to understand as much as we can, and then where understanding ends, faith begins. Good, because I can understand a little bit. Even a first grader can understand a little relativity. Why not? Faith is a foolish path for something that cannot be grasped by the mind. Faith is a foolish path for something that can be grasped by the mind. That's what the scientists are saying. Faith is a foolish path for that which can be grasped by the mind, but with the infinite light of God, which cannot by definition be contained by the finite tools of cognition, the appropriate connection is through faith. And this is the essence of our faith. Our faith is not about that which we can understand. Our faith is about that which cannot by definition be understood, because it is higher than definition. It is infinite. Our faith is not that we believe that there's a big boogeyman up there. Faith is our connection with infinity. Why? Because we have it in us. As the verse states, I was a fool without knowledge. This is Psalms that I mentioned before. I was a fool without knowledge. I was an animal towards you, yet I was always with you. This is King David's words, very powerful words here. He says, I was a fool without knowledge. I was an animal towards you, yet I was always with you. What is he saying? He's making fun of himself? Is he self-deprecating? No. He's recognizing that precisely because I was a fool and an animal, in other words, the fact that I turned off my logic using my faculty of faith and not reason, that's why I was always with you and connected to you. Mm-hmm. If I was using my logic to connect to you, God, I'd be barking up the wrong tree. I would never be able to grasp you. Because to grasp God with logic is as ridiculous as grasping Beethoven's ninth with a wrench. Right? You wouldn't be able to grasp Beethoven's ninth with a wrench. So why would you be able to grasp infinity with logic? Logic only grasps like a test tube. You put God into a test tube. You can't put God into a test tube. It doesn't work like that. Right? So he says, because I turned off my brain, because I was a fool and an animal, therefore I was with you and I'm connected to you because I recognize the beauty and the power of my faith. As an indication of the dormant love for God, which can awaken within us all the time, the Tanya highlights the historical phenomenon of forced conversion. Now this faith that we've just identified is the answer to that question in the beginning of chapter 18. We said we're starting our short method to self-mastery, which we said is about the hidden love. We had to understand where the hidden love comes from. We answered that. It comes from an inheritance from our patriarchs. And we asked also another question. We said, how do we come to inherit the origin of this love? I'm sorry. The other question we answered, the origin of this love, we now understand. The origin of this love, we now know what it is. It is the infinite light that shines in our souls. That's the origin of this love. We know where we got it from, and now we know what the origin of it is. It is the infinite light that shines in our soul. It is my identity. I cannot betray my God in the same way that I wouldn't just randomly cut my finger off. Because my finger is me, and God is me. Like my children are part of me, right? So that is the origin of this love. The two questions we've not yet answered are, in the next chapter, are the nature, aspiration of this love, and how this love incorporates fear. How? Because, if we can identify the hidden love, love causes you to do all the 248 positive mitzvahs. Fear will motivate you to refrain from the 365 negative mitzvahs. So if this love has within it fear, by just arousing this hidden love, you'll motivate yourself to all the positive mitzvahs and all the negative mitzvahs. So we've got to understand the nature and aspiration of this love in chapter 19, and also there we'll understand how this love incorporates within it fear. But now, what we are going to do in the last section of this chapter is address a phenomenon, which is a bit of a tangent, but a great application, which allows us to get a little more comfortable and to identify this hidden love, this natural love, which is within us. Actually, what he's about to address is say, look, we've explained so far why this love is natural. We've addressed why this love is natural. But what we've not addressed is why this love is hidden. It's natural within us. So why are we aware of it all the time? All right? Because it's hidden. Let's take a look why it's hidden. What he's going to say is that when it comes to forced conversion, Jews in many cases, most cases actually, declined to convert and chose to die. Why would they do that? Because when facing forced conversion, there they have no choice but to recognize the existence of the light within them. When it comes to other sins, this is what we're going to explain in chapters 22, 23, 24, and 25. When it comes to other sins, our evil inclination confuses us. As you eat this little dinner, you think this dinner is going to cut you off from God? Nah, don't exaggerate. You think that this little sin kala, this little sin, is going to cut you off from God? Don't get ahead of yourself. But when it comes to denying your faith, can the evil inclination say to us, you think that converting to Christianity is going to cut you off from God? The answer is yeah. Really? Of course I think it's going to cut me off from God, because I'm explicitly cutting myself off from Hashem. Right? When it comes to a forced conversion, or conversion of any kind, even the evil inclination can't confuse you that you're not cutting yourself off from Hashem, from yourself.
But I think there's a difference between forced and a choice. If you're forced so that you can live, you can still practice Judaism.
Yeah, but the Jews still chose to die. In many cases. In many cases. Sometimes they chose to live, whatever. But he addresses here why would any normal person choose to die? Why do we even have a majority of cases where they chose to die? The reason is because they knew they were cutting themselves off from their identity, from their own essence. Later on, we're going to explain that if we were able to be smart enough to recognize that every single sin cuts you off from God, as much as conversion,
Oh my gosh.
then you would never sin. It's only our evil inclination that confuses us. It says, this is a little sin. It doesn't really count. It doesn't really matter. Let's take a look at this in the bottom of 218. That is why even the most irreverent and sinful Jews will, in the majority of cases, agree to sanctify God's name and give up their lives when faced with a threat such as serve idols or die, and they will suffer harsh torture rather than denounce the one God. The fact that when given an ultimatum, many irreverent and sinful Jews chose to give up their lives for Judaism is startling and counterintuitive. It is conceivable that an extremely devoted Jew might choose to do the ultimate act of worship and die for God, but for irreverent Jews who reject Judaism as their day-to-day guidance and value system, the notion of martyrdom is hard to fathom. The Tanya offers this as evidence for the presence of dormant love and faith in the hearts and souls of all Jews, regardless of their level of piety and religious education. A faith that will tend to surface when faced with a very great challenge. He's using this as a proof that you have that love within you. Many irreverent Jews will sacrifice their lives to God even if they are morally uncultivated, uneducated in Judaism, and ignorant of God's greatness. And even to the little knowledge that they do possess, they give little thought, so they are not choosing to give up their lives as a result of any mental appreciation or careful thinking about God. Rather, they give up their lives not because they understand, without any mental appreciation or careful thinking, as if it was simply impossible to denounce the one God without any reasoning or rational argument whatsoever. And this is, as we've explained, because all of the soul is illuminated and energized by the one God, through God's infinite light being present in the soul's component of Chachma, which transcends fathomable knowledge and cognitive intellect. In the majority of cases, in face of with a huge test of faith, dormant love will automatically awaken. But how do we access this dormant love? In the normal, everyday setting? That's what Tanya is going to address in the following chapters.
Okay.
So we've hopefully redefined faith. Often most of us think that faith is something that we come to after much study.
That we what, please?
We often think that faith is something that we come to after much study and education.
But it's there.
I met a Reform rabbi once. came to me and we had a coffee. And he says, I put on my yarmulke because out of respect to you. I said, okay, that's very nice. But then he said to me, I admire your faith. He said to me, I admire your faith. And I thought it was a very interesting statement that he said to me, I admire your faith.
Nice.
Because faith is not something which I think what he meant was, I admire your observance. I think that's what he meant.
Right.
No, I think you meant what he said.
But according to the way we've explained it in Tanya,
Of what you would do and the way-
maybe conviction, maybe. But faith is something which we all have. Even he is very proud and passionate about his Judaism.
I live in the world of Reform and conservative Jews. Faith is not so common. People lose their faith. People question their faith. People have all sorts of problems. with their faith.
But I think they might be using the wrong word. I think what they're using is they question their connection with Judaism. Faith is, according to, we just defined faith as something much higher than that. Faith is identity. That's what it is. Faith is your identity. Do you realize that you are Or Ein Sof Milubash Beguf? That you are the infinite light enclosed in a body? So Tanya is going to explain, for most of us, it's hidden most of the time. But when push comes to shove, when you have to choose to deny it, that's when it comes up to the fore. And that's the reason why Jews will often die for their faith. Because our faith is our identity. It's not how we choose to conduct our lives, or the passion with which we can choose to conduct our faith, or how often we exercise our Judaism. Faith is who we are. And this really, more than how it changes our perception of other people, I'm hoping that it changes your perception of yourself. To raise the stakes of the game, like I mentioned last week, the quickest way to lose your power is to believe that you never had any in the first place. God has chosen you to invest his essence in you. Hashem believes in you. Don't let him down. By mere virtue of being born a Jew, you could have been born one of the other 7 billion people on earth. But he chose you and me. Don't know why, but he did. If he believes in you, isn't it time for you to believe in you? One of the big challenges of King Saul, great criticism, I often remind myself of this. When King Saul made a mistake, he didn't listen to the prophet. The prophet says to him, Samuel says, if you're small in your own eyes, Nasi Yisrael ata, for heaven's sake, recognize that you are the king of Israel. You're granting yourself and everybody else a great disservice by thinking that you're small. You are the leader of all of Israel. Right? And I often have to remind myself of that too. Sometimes when I think, nobody's going to notice, it's not a big deal, it's not important. No! You're a king of Israel. You're a nation of a kingdom of priests and a chosen people. Hashem chose you and me. He's counting on us. He invested his essence in us. Don't disappoint him.
I heard an interesting one by Rabbi Jonathan Sachs explaining part of our faith and our practice, how just as soon as we get up in the morning, before we wash hands, before we do anything else, we're acknowledging, and the end of that Modeani is Rabba Emunatecha, which until that point I didn't quite recognize it, but he said we're saying to God that how great is his faith in us. He gave us back our soul, and we're amazed how great his faith in us is.
Like he still believes in us after all that.
Amazing, yeah.
After yesterday, right?
That's the way to start the day, when you have such a credit that God trusts in you.
Yeah, now you better not screw it up.
Then you start the
Beautiful.
right way.
Thank you.
And this is our takeaway for Yutes Kislev, the 19th of Kislev. Today is Rosh Hashanah for Chassidus, to recommit ourselves to the values of Chassidus and to make sure that we're studying more Chassidus. And I highly encourage you to meditate on Chassidus, to review the chapters that we've learned, to listen to the audios, to reread the chapters, and to recommit yourself to making your future much more infused with these powerful teachings of Chassidus of Tanya, so that you can live a more inspired life.
Thank you.
All right?
Thank you.